Hi guys, it's the Seraph, and I hope you guys are having a blessed day. So, I've decided one of the series I want to start on this channel is underrated SCPs. I may also extend this concept to underrated horror themes and underrated horror stories in the genre itself, but for right now, we're going to stick to SCPs. And I have one lined up for this video today that I think everyone's going to find pretty interesting. Here today, we are going to examine SCP-2774, the Sloth. Before I get into what the SCP is exactly, I'm going to explain a little bit of my thoughts on why it's a little disturbing preemptively, and why a lot of SCPs in this range and in this concept are disturbing as a whole. So, for the most part, humans seem to almost innately value the idea of emotional, physical, and spiritual autonomy over almost everything. And the idea of something controlling your will, taking control of your mind, your body, your spirit, making you feel a certain way has been the subject of a lot of dystopian and a lot of apocalyptic novels. And what this SCP does is once you're exposed to it through media, it's a cognito hazard by what I understand. And it essentially ingrains itself into your brain. And slowly over the course of 40 to 100 hours, you'll be exposed to more and more hallucinations of this anomalous sloth. And the more people who are infected by it, the more control it gains of the crowd. So, in theory, if it were to go unchecked, it could take over all of humanity. And it's shown the desire to be extremely violent. We've seen it attack people, we've seen it force people to fight. Um, we don't actually know what its end goal is, if its end goal is just destruction or if its end goal is just, I want to take over the largest amount of people and create a terrifying hive mind. And it's kind of interesting because it, in a way, it mirrors a lot of body horror when you get right down to it. Body horror SCPs like The Flesh That Hates, for instance, they come up with the idea of what if your body was taken and melded into something else, forced to be something unnatural. And this thing kind of does a similar action, but it's via your brain. It's taking over your mind. It's described as you're basically just a passenger in the car at that point. You can see what's going on, but the sloth is controlling you. And that seems to be a deeply terrifying concept to people. And I would have to agree. That's one reason I feel this SCP is pretty freaking underrated, because it's genuinely terrifying. The concept that this SCP could take and control all of humanity and do whatever the hell he wanted if the Foundation wasn't containing it is awful. And one of the interesting things about it is they actually end up having to cull the population of people. We see there's around 6,400 people infected with the sloth, and because it gets more powerful and gets more control when it gains more hosts, what the Foundation ends up having to do is they end up having to cull around, like, I think it's in the 90 percentile range. If I'm correct, you guys can correct me in the comments if that's an incorrect metric. I'm an English major, not a math major. um, but more to the point, there's only about 200 people left. And their idea was that they wanted to save these people from this fate, which, in terms of Foundation, is a pretty benevolent action. And it's motivated by the idea that they have to stop it or everyone will be in trouble. And Actually, it's cool because with these 200 people left, they can still experiment and try to remove the sloth from people without it having too much power. So while you could argue that this is totally kind of a messed up action, we see that the sloth is psychologically torturing a lot of these people, and one of the test subjects actually begs to be killed. So this, to me, is one of the rare instances where you can see the Foundation being directly wholly benevolent to this group of people. They're putting them out of their misery. They're actually using euthanasia um, via lethal injection. And though it's messed up in a way, this is genuinely one of the few times you'll really see the Foundation getting to do something a little nice. But, in Foundation terms, nice is pretty relative since they're still dying.